What if I told you the life you're living right now might not even be yours? Sounds crazy, right? But hear me out. There's a very real chance that you woke up one day inside a reality that wasn't originally yours. You think you remember your past, but do you really? Maybe your consciousness migrated. Maybe at some point you jumped into another timeline. And the scariest part, you never noticed. Some people feel this, a strange discomfort, like they're in the wrong place, living with memories that don't quite fit, a never-ending déjà vu, a gut feeling that something is just off. But what if that's not just your imagination? What if there are deeper and more disturbing explanations? In this video, we're going to dive into the most mind-bending yet scientifically possible ideas that suggest you might be living someone else's life. If this already hit you in the gut, subscribe and turn on notifications, because what you're about to discover might change everything you thought you knew about yourself. All right, let's face it. The idea that we might be living a life that wasn't originally ours, it sounds like science fiction. But this theory is older and more serious than most people realize. Because what is reality? What does it even mean to be you? Who's to say your memories, your thoughts, even your body truly belong to you? Modern physics, especially quantum mechanics, has already proven that reality isn't as solid as it looks. Particles don't even decide where they are until someone observes them. And some theories suggest there are infinite versions of you, living infinite lives across parallel universes with differences so subtle you wouldn't even notice. And it gets deeper. Serious scientists like David Deutsch and Hugh Everett believe these other universes aren't just speculation. They're a mathematical consequence of the laws of physics. Now mix that with altered states of consciousness, near-death experiences, lucid dreams, that feeling of waking up in the wrong place. Could it be that in those moments, our consciousness actually shifts? And here's the mindbender. If that's possible, then who you are right now might just be a temporary fusion between your awareness and some alternate version of your life. Maybe you're just visiting this timeline. Maybe in another version of reality, you made a different choice, loved someone else, lived somewhere else. And for some unknown reason, your consciousness jumped and landed here. It's unsettling, yes, but also strangely liberating. Because if it's true, it means you're not stuck. It means you have the power to reshape this life and maybe even influence others you're connected to. So let me ask you, have you ever felt like you're living a life that wasn't meant for you? Like the world around you shifted ever so slightly, and something just doesn't feel right? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your experience. You've probably heard of the multiverse theory. Sounds like something out of a superhero movie. But it's actually rooted in serious scientific proposals. The idea that our universe is just one among infinite others. Picture this for a moment. Every choice you've ever made, and even the ones you didn't, created branches, parallel realities, timelines splitting off like roots from an infinite tree. In one of them, you moved to a different city. In another, you never met that person. In yet another, you died young. And in one, you're not even you. This isn't science fiction. It's based on the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, proposed by Hugh Everett back in the 1950s. According to this theory, every time a subatomic particle faces two paths, it takes both. The universe then splits in two, one for each outcome. Now think about that. If matter behaves like this at the microscopic level, why wouldn't the entire universe? But that's just the first layer. When we talk about quantum branching, we're not just talking about particles. We're talking about choices, destinies, entire lives that split and coexist. And here's where it gets personal. Your consciousness, your mind, your identity could be drifting between those realities without you even realizing it. Ever wake up feeling like something's wrong? Like you've been knocked off your axis? Maybe it's just a bad day, or maybe it's a leftover feeling from a shift between timelines. Altered states of consciousness, like lucid dreams, out-of-body experiences, near-death events, are often described as moments where reality becomes flexible. You recognize the places, the scents, the sounds, but something off. Maybe it's how people talk. Maybe it's the sky, the streets, or your own reflection in a mirror. Then you wake up, but you don't feel relief. You feel loss, like you left something or someone behind. What if that was a brief visit to an alternate version of your life? Many cultures call this a spiritual journey. Others describe it as soul travel. Science still debates it, but quantum physics doesn't rule out the possibility of multiple dimensions vibrating around us, invisible and parallel. The problem? We don't have physical proof, and that's where the frustration kicks in. All of this could be real, and at the same time, could just be illusions created by a brain trying to make sense of chaos. But what if there's a way to test it? What if our consciousness isn't locked into just one body or one timeline? What if it's more like a radio, tuning into different frequencies of reality? And those strange moments you feel, the déjà vus, memory glitches, feelings of misalignment, are actually signal interference. Your mind accidentally tuning into a nearby channel. And it doesn't stop there. Some people, after traumatic or life-changing events, say things like, "Since that day, I haven't been the same," or "It feels like I woke up in someone else's life." Is that just a psychological metaphor? Or a real phenomenon? Imagine your life is a movie, a full-length film with a clear beginning, middle, and end. And suddenly, you walk into the theater and realize the actors are slightly different. Your mother's voice is a bit sharper. Your room has a detail you don't remember putting there. You get that chill in your gut. But life goes on, as if nothing changed, except you. You know something is off. That sense of unease, that quiet scream in your gut, might be a symptom of an interdimensional shift in consciousness. And if you think this is fiction, remember, physics already tells us that particles can exist in two places at once, change states just by being observed, and entangle with others across light years of distance. So how far-fetched is it that right now you might be living in a neighboring universe, one that started in the same place but took a different turn? That's the question that leads us to the next part of this journey. Because so far, we've talked about physics, consciousness, and possibility. But what happens when those ideas collide with philosophy, identity, and the boundaries of what we call self? Let's step deeper into this rabbit hole. If you're still here, it means this idea resonates, at least a little, with something inside you. Not just curiosity, not just imagination, but a sense that something about your life might not be entirely aligned. So let's push this further. Throughout history, mystics, shamans, and sages across cultures have spoken about layers of reality. They never used the term multiverse, but they described journeys beyond the physical, visions of other lives, other versions of the self. In ancient Hindu texts, the Atman, or soul, was said to be eternal, experiencing many incarnations across multiple realities. In Buddhism, the concept of samsara describes a cycle of rebirths, not always linear, not always physical. And in modern psychedelic research, users often report what sounds eerily similar to multiversal travel. They enter other dimensions, meet alternate versions of themselves, and return with a deep sense of knowing, even if they can't explain it. Science usually dismisses this as hallucination. But here's the twist. Hallucinations don't mean fake. They mean perception divorced from the agreed-upon physical world. But what if some of these hallucinations are just misaligned perceptions of real things, like picking up a radio signal from a nearby station? It's fuzzy, distorted, but real. Let's reset. Have you ever felt like your life changed direction without you doing anything? Suddenly, people around you start behaving differently. A place you remember vividly looks altered, not renovated, not updated, just off. That feeling is dismissed as stress or memory lapse. But what if it's a recalibration? What if you or your consciousness shifted into a parallel track? In theoretical physics, there's a term called quantum tunneling. It describes how a particle can appear on the other side of a barrier without crossing the space in between. It doesn't climb over the wall, it just shows up elsewhere. Now imagine your consciousness doing that. One moment you're here, and the next you're subtly elsewhere. Not dead, not dreaming, just rerouted. Let's bring this closer to the personal. There are documented cases in psychology and medicine where individuals have memories of lives they've never lived. They recall names, places, languages that they were never exposed to. And no, this isn't just in children. Some adults, after comas or intense trauma, emerge with new accents, new skills, even new personalities. Science calls it dissociative identity or cryptomnesia. But what if it's interdimensional memory bleed? What if you're tapping into the experiences of another version of you? That version might have made different choices, loved someone else, took a risk, failed, won, died, and maybe for some reason, through trauma, dream, or chance, your consciousness slipped sideways and landed here. This would explain a lot. Why some people feel alienated in their own families. Why certain places feel hauntingly familiar, even though you've never been there. Why your dreams sometimes feel more real than your waking life. So if this is true, what now? Here comes the solution. Or at least, the beginning of one. If your consciousness isn't fixed, if you're capable of shifting even unintentionally, then maybe, just maybe, you can do it intentionally. We're not talking about science fiction teleportation. We're talking about mental focus, awareness, energy. Some call it visualization. Others call it prayer, or intention, or manifesting. But at the core, it's the same thing. Aligning your mind with a version of reality where things unfold differently. This doesn't mean denying your current reality. It means accepting that reality might be more flexible than we were taught. That the you sitting here, watching this, might have the power to retune, to shift, to explore the other branches of your life, not by force, but by resonance. Because if you are living someone else's life, then maybe it's time to ask, whose life do you want to live now? So, if there are infinite versions of you, and consciousness can shift between them, who exactly are you? This is where philosophy steps in, and it doesn't offer easy answers. From ancient times to today, thinkers have wrestled with a single haunting question. What is the self? Is it your memories, your personality, your choices, your body, or is it something more subtle, like the observer behind all those things? The one watching your thoughts, not being them. In Western philosophy, Descartes famously said, "I think, therefore I am." But what if you can think different thoughts, have different memories, even switch personalities, and still be you? Then who is that I behind it all? Let's bring in a modern twist. Identity isn't fixed, it's fluid. Your brain is neuroplastic, it can change. Your beliefs can evolve. Your story can be rewritten. But here's the twist. If all of that can change, then what exactly is you holding on to? Now tie that back to multiversal theory. If there are countless versions of you, each shaped by slightly different circumstances, beliefs, fears, triumphs, then maybe identity isn't a point. It's a cloud, a range, a spectrum. And maybe your consciousness is the one thing that can drift across that spectrum. Let's reset. Think about a moment in your life when you said, "That's not like me," or "I don't recognize who I've become." That's more than just emotion. It's a fracture in identity. It's you sensing that you're temporarily out of sync with the version of yourself you remember being. And sometimes, movies capture this better than science ever could. Let's look at a few. In The Matrix, Neo discovers that his world is a simulation and that his real identity was hidden from him his entire life. In Everything Everywhere All at Once, Evelyn experiences dozens of versions of herself across the multiverse, each shaped by tiny decisions she didn't even know were important. And in Mr. Nobody, a single boy stands at the crossroads of his parents' divorce, and from that moment, an infinite number of lives unfold in parallel, showing what he could have become. These stories are compelling not because they're fantastical, but because they feel familiar. They resonate with something deep, the sense that we are more than one person, that inside of us, there are versions we've already met, and versions we've yet to become. And sometimes, we get glimpses of them, in a dream, in a moment of instinct, in a strange memory we can't quite place. Here's another angle. There's a growing field of study called quantum cognition. It's the idea that our thoughts, not just particles, might follow quantum logic. They can exist in superposition. They can entangle. They can collapse based on observation. What does that mean? That your sense of self, your I, might not be one. It might be many. And the act of observing yourself, reflecting, choosing, feeling, is what collapses one identity into reality. But until then, you exist as potential, as possibility. This would explain why sometimes you feel like a stranger to yourself, and other times you feel more you than ever before. Because the self isn't fixed, it's chosen, every moment. Now let's bring this home. If everything we've explored so far is even partially true, then you have more power than you think. You are not a victim of a timeline. You are a navigator of timelines. And the key to shifting is not technology. It's not science. It's something older, simpler, intention. What you focus on, what you believe about yourself, what you accept as real. These are the levers of consciousness. They're subtle, quiet, but they're always in your hands. Now here's the challenge and the solution. Most people never shift because they never question. They accept their identity, their story, their past, as if it were carved in stone. But what if that story is flexible? What if you could re-script it? You can't change where you were born, but maybe you can choose who wakes up tomorrow. Not in some grand mystical way, but in a grounded, intentional one. Because the truth is, if you're living someone else's life, even just emotionally, it's never too late to return to your own. Or even better, to create a new one. One that resonates, one that fits, one that feels like home. So the real question isn't, am I living someone else's life? It's, do I want to keep living it? Or do I finally take the wheel? Let's go even deeper. There's something almost painful about realizing you've been living passively. Moving through a life that doesn't quite feel like yours. Maybe you followed expectations, lived based on someone else's story, carried dreams that were never really yours to begin with. That's the quiet tragedy of existence. We become so good at surviving that we forget how to choose. And when that happens, when your days blur together, when your joy feels secondhand, when your reflection feels like a mask, you might be living in a timeline that wasn't meant for you. Not because someone forced you into it, but because you stopped shifting. So here's the shift. It's not about chasing some mystical version of yourself. It's about tuning in to the subtle signals that tell you when something's wrong. That tiny resistance in your chest when you say yes, but mean no. That hollow feeling when you celebrate a success that doesn't actually excite you. That ache in your gut when you wake up dreading your own routine. Those aren't weaknesses. They're compasses, and they point somewhere real. They're guiding you back to a path that aligns with who you truly are, or who you could be. Now let's flip the question. What if you're already living your true life, but don't realize it? What if your doubt is the final obstacle between you and peace? Because sometimes the path doesn't feel familiar. Sometimes growth feels like misalignment. Sometimes your new identity is so far from the old one that it feels like you've jumped timelines, when in reality, you've just evolved. That's the paradox. Not every discomfort means you're in the wrong place. Sometimes it means you're exactly where you're supposed to be, and you're just scared of who you're becoming. So what do? We pause. We get quiet. We ask the questions most people avoid. Am I living by my own values or someone else's? Do I feel at home in my own mind? If I met a version of me from another life, would I admire them or envy them? Those answers are your compass, not to escape your life, but to reshape it. Let's wrap with this. There's a scene in Interstellar, one of the most emotional, where Cooper realizes time and space aren't linear. That love, connection, memory, they transcend dimensions. And in that moment, science meets spirit. Logic collides with feeling, and what we once dismissed as fiction becomes something deeper. Maybe the multiverse isn't out there. Maybe it's in here. Maybe every choice, every belief, every intention you carry is a doorway to another version of this life. And maybe, just maybe, the act of choosing isn't just personal, it's cosmic. So the next time you feel off, don't panic, don't numb it, don't dismiss it. Get curious. What part of your reality feels borrowed? What part feels unfinished? What part feels like a version of you calling out from another path? That voice, quiet, persistent, is not fiction. It's a signal. And if you follow it, you might just find your way home. But there's still one question we haven't touched. And maybe it's the most important of all. What happens when two versions of you collide? What if two timelines, two identities, two paths try to exist in the same space? What if the dreams you've given up on start pulling you back? What if the you left behind doesn't want to be forgotten? There are people who felt it. Moments where reality cracks just enough to reveal something or someone familiar. Memories that don't belong to this life. Emotions triggered by things you've never experienced. Some call it trauma, others call it reincarnation. But what if it's something else entirely? Something we haven't even begun to understand. If you've ever felt that pull, that flicker in your chest, then keep watching, because what's coming next might help you finally connect the missing pieces. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.